And this is why you won't call yourself a Democrat, even though Republicans stand for everything.
Yeah, I'm not going to call my. No,
this
I'm
is
not
so
you.
dumb, dude. Like,
I'm not you. I'm not you philosophically.
I think if you were to ever call yourself a Democrat, you would lose the whole like splendor of you being the one good Republican. For you to say, I am a Democrat now, even though ideologically it's a big tent and there's plenty of room for you in it, it would jeopardize your status as the one good Republican.
Let's say that you have Nikki Haley without the internet censorship. Okay?
You're voting
I'm
for
voting for
Haley.
Nikki Haley over Zoran Mandami every time, 100 times out of 100.
She endorsed Trump. And that for you is not disqualifying?
Yeah, but that's why I think I have the caveat of without all the baggage.
Okay.
You're saying like that, like it's impossible, but Maxwell Frost is close to me in district, and Maxwell Frost is like 25. You're saying we can't find like a 26-year-old congressman?
The new Republican youth are Nazis.
I know. It's so bad.
Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description.
Republicans, okay? I have a drawing. I'm not going to show it to you, but I have a drawing. Republicans, I was raised on the reason why we're not Democrats is because Democrats appeal to the vulgar masses for consensus. Okay, they try to hand out Gibbs. They Gibbs entitlements to the underprivileged masses in order to achieve results. Republicans are smarter. They're a higher level of being. They believe in representative democracy. And just because people are suffering doesn't mean that the policies that you're creating to alleviate their suffering are actually good for society in the long term. That's almost like bar for bar the kind of shit that I was raised with for why Republicans were better than Democrats. And then I'm trying to think of what else, like rule of law, balance of powers, the genius of our Constitution, the genius of the founding fathers, the moral arc of history often benefiting Republicans when they were the ones who championed the Civil Rights Act and when they championed the Civil War in order to emancipate the slaves and blah, 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 blah. There's this entire like philosophical history of the Republican Party that's very highfalutin and very high ideal and very idealistic. But they have annihilated all of that narrative within the past 10 years through the Trump cult. There's no respect for the rule of law. There's no respect for the Republic of the United States. There's no respect for the Constitution of the United States. There's no respect for the balance of power. There's no respect for the moral arc of the justice of the Republican American project. There's nothing. They hollowed it out.
I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid, and this is an opportunity for you to come out.
Rip off the tourniquet.
Okay, I'm going to rip off the tourniquet. This is your coming out moment. You now identify as a Democrat.
No, fuck you too.
I mean, what allegiance do you have to the Republican Party anymore? You were happy to call yourself a Republican.
I will vote Democrat as necessary, but number one, this is like the perfect example. I'm so happy we get to talk about this. I'm going to vote Democrat as necessary. But you better believe that if you're running a socialist, I'm not voting for him.
Dude, can you just...
If you have aggressive gun control that's on the ballot, I'm not voting for him. Same thing. What's another thing?
But
Also,
you're not
by
a
the way,
Republican anymore. Like, why are you holding on to this Republican
I'm
label?
a Republican philosophically, not a member necessarily, or I'm not going to vote with the party when they're voting for a pedophile cultist.
Okay, but
so let's say this happens to you. And by the way, here's the perfect example. Here's why Democrats are maybe better from a harm reduction standpoint, but here's why their morals are just as fucked. I'm going to ask you a pointed question. I want an honest answer. Why didn't the Epstein files come out under Biden?
Because they didn't make a big deal of it, because they probably, I'm just going to be honest with you, they're not in the weeds on this pedo running the whole world conspiracy thing. They're not in it the way that it is a salient issue for Republicans. It's not a salient issue for Democrats. You're probably going to say because they wanted to protect Bill Clinton, which is just...
That's actually exactly what I was going to say.
There's no proof of that whatsoever.
What are you talking about?
What's the proof that Democrats withheld releasing the Epstein? There was no pressure to release the Epstein files from their base the way there is for the Republican base and the MAGA base.
I agree with that. Okay, but there is evidence that Bill Gates and Bill Clinton were both close associates of Jeffrey Epstein.
No doubt. But where's the evidence? That's not what you have to point to. What you have to point to is the evidence that the Democrats purposely did not release information in their authority to protect Bill Clinton and to protect Bill Gates.
You're right. I don't have evidence, except for the fact that it would be extremely damaging to the point that it would have annihilated the Trump campaign and therefore likely saved the fucking republic from the waking nightmare that we're in every single day. That if you had evidence that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were close associates who very likely sex trafficked and had relations with girls aged 14 to 17, that's a death knell.
Well, it's your assumption that the DOJ operates the way, like everyone is assuming that the DOJ under Biden was operating the way the DOJ operates under Trump, where the DOJ under Trump right now is operating solely at the whims of the political needs. And
why wouldn't you just do it from a legalistic, moral perspective? You find hold on. I just want to present this to you. Okay, you're Pisco, you're President Pisco, Vice President Pisco, your second DOJ head Pisco. Okay, you're a Democrat. You get credible evidence across your desk that Donald Trump, Bill Gates, and Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, were best friends with and known associates through the 80s, 90s, and thousands of Jeffrey Epstein, that they hung out at his penthouse in New York, that they hung out at his island in St. Thomas or wherever the fuck it is, St. Vincent's, whatever it's called, and that you have a dozen female sex workers who were aged 14 to 17 who can all testify that they engaged in sex trafficking and sex relations with these three wildly powerful people. What do you do?
So if there is credible information that powerful people committed sex crimes, is what you're saying, we would charge them. But
okay. Why didn't Joe Biden and why didn't the Biden administration charge
So the first layer
Trump?
The first layer of that is this notion, and I'm not saying that you're saying it, that Biden is taking operational control of the Department of Justice, or his political affiliates are taking control of the DOJ the way that Trump is. And they're not. You know, Biden was honorable in the sense that he was largely being independent from the Department of Justice. There's no real evidence that Biden was interfering with Merrick Garland or anything. That's one of the reasons why I'm still standing a lot of Merrick Garland stuff, is because I think it was an honorable act of Biden. It reflects well on Biden that he had an independence from the Department of Justice. And I think that's good. And that's so, one is, I don't think that Biden had an input. I don't think Biden was like aware of all this evidence because Biden's not interfering with the DOJ at that level. And then number two is, I think that we're left with a conclusion that there probably isn't enough for a criminal case against someone like Trump or Clinton.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? That is why I think that this information hasn't come out, is almost exactly what you just said, is that they said, okay, this is going to be damaging to a bunch of people and we don't have enough for a criminal case.
Right. So I mean, it's the same
I think that's why they did it.
Because you should not be, your assumption in asking the question was like, if it would save the country, Pisco, why wouldn't they release all this? Well, that would presuppose that I would want the DOJ to be releasing information based on their priors of how it's going to affect politics, which is precisely what I don't want them to do.
Maybe I'm ignorant to some level of like federal investigation. Okay, the way that it worked in local law enforcement. So I'm laying out my ignorance. So feel free to correct me. The way that it worked in local law enforcement is I, as a cop, respond to a crime. I show up to said crime. I preserve evidence. I secure evidence. I log evidence. I write out a report. I talk to victims 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I talk to suspects A, B, C, D, and E. And then if I have a probable cause for arrest, I arrest that person. If I don't have probable cause, I write up a report and I turn it over to a state attorney. In the state of Florida, as far as I understand it, all these records are public. You could probably go through every single fucking case number from Mount Dora Police Department, and you could secure every report that I wrote for half a fucking decade, you could secure my unredacted police report. And the only thing that you might not be able to get is if there's like CSAM material or if there's drugs or some shit like that. Like, you're obviously not going to be able to get a sample of the drugs so you can independently test the drugs. But like, you're going to get like 95%.
So most of this shit is not public. So I'll tell you, most of this stuff is not typically public in the federal criminal investigation stuff. Is they let the filings speak for themselves, and they don't just release all this information. A good example of this is on the Russia investigation. They charged a bunch of firms that were connected to Prigozhin, and they were going to go to trial, but there was like no big evidence that they would be able to actually get to the underlying people behind those different firms. And so they dropped the case. And the reason they dropped the case is they didn't want to go to trial where the prospect of punishment was dim with respect to these different firms, and reveal how they got the evidence, or how like you'd have to inquire a little bit into methods when you're doing the actual case. And so that's one of the reasons why they don't reveal it as a matter of course. Listen, between you and me, I think there's a big enough public clamor right now, public interest, that there ought to be like a comprehensive report at this point, right? And I think that the Democrats probably, once there were shouts for transparency there, I think the DOJ should have responded to those. I don't know that Biden should have gotten involved necessarily, because this is like a very public case. I just don't think that there's any evidence that the reason that they didn't release him under the Democrats is because they were trying to protect Bill Clinton. I think that if it was Biden was willing to throw the entire party under the bus for his presidential things, and I just don't think the Democrats are that organized that they would have all and infecting the DOJ. DOJ is like filled with a lot of like Republicans who don't like Bill Clinton and shit. And like, look at how they treated Hillary Clinton. So the FBI and DOJ are not fans necessarily of the Clintons. So I just don't. And if there was last thing, if there was a cover up in that respect, don't you think we would have heard about it? Like, we heard about it with the fucking IRS whistleblowers. And so I just have no reason to think that.
Yeah, but I had to fight you fucking tooth and nail on that bullshit too.
Well, because the whistleblowers are full of shit on a lot of stuff. Let's not get into that. On some stuff, they're full of shit. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if there was this evidence of like the Democrats covering up, I think we would get it from the DOJ, and the proof is kind of in the pudding that we got other whistleblower reports from other stuff, and because if they really thought it was helpful for their electoral math, and they had control of the DOJ over which like the Republicans seem to think that they do, and if they really wanted to win the election the way Republicans think that they're using the DOJ to win the election, and there was this evidence, they would have thrown Bill Clinton under the bus any day of the week. And the proof is right now. Like, right now, the Democrats are leading the charge in Congress to release the files, and they don't seem to give a fuck.
Yeah, but they might be saying no balls. They not only are they saying no balls because they know they can beat the shit out of the Trump admin on this topic, but also Clinton's a fucking dinosaur. Clinton's almost what is he, in his late fucking 70s? He's not running again.
Clinton is as old as Trump. Clinton's as old as Trump, and he was a dinosaur.
Yeah, he's not okay. Ago. He can't run again, and Hillary already lost. So that was her shot. She's not getting another shot.
So your whole argument falls apart. So your whole argument falls apart. If they're no longer useful, then they wouldn't. Because your whole thing is they're trying to protect Bill Clinton, and that falls apart if you're like, oh, okay, who cares? They'll throw him under the bus. In 2020, 2021, sorry, 2021 to 2025.
Okay, so if you had to ask, I'll admit that all of my motivational speculation is speculation. I'll admit that it's all speculation. Okay, so we don't have to twist ourselves at the knots for this thing.
It's mental masturbation.
You say that, I'm not backing off, and the reason why I'm not backing off is because, like, seriously, talking to you and fucking Steven about Hunter Biden was pulling fucking teeth. So I don't give a shit. Okay, when it comes to my speculation on the motivations for whatever, is, you know what? They probably went to Biden and they said, hey, listen, we have this thing. It's super old. Statute of limitations are expired. There's a lot of allegations. There's not a lot of substantive evidence. We have half a dozen to a dozen witness testimonies, but we can't even corroborate like where they were in the country because this was like 40 fucking years ago when we didn't have cell phones or metadata or any of this kind of bullshit. The flight logs are private flight logs using aliases. And effectively what'll happen is, yeah, there might be like 2 or 3 serious criminal allegations against people that we want to take out politically, but realistically, there's hundreds or thousands of other associates of Jeffrey Epstein, of whom they are involved in the private records of Jeffrey Epstein, but there's no allegations of criminal misconduct. And if we publish this, we're not just damaging the reputation of 2 or 3 characters, we're actually damaging the reputations of hundreds or thousands of innocent people. Therefore, not only do we not have enough for a criminal case, we actually think that allowing this to go to the public, we would actually hurt a shitload of innocent people. And that might have been the calculus that they made in order to justify keeping it secret. But I think this thing is of such public interest that it doesn't fucking matter.
And this is why you won't call yourself a Democrat, even though Republicans stand for everything.
Yeah, I'm not going to call that. No,
this is so dumb, dude. Like,
I'm not you philosophically.
No, but I don't agree. I'm going to say something, and you have to let me say it. I think if you were to ever call yourself a Democrat, you would lose the whole like splendor of you being the one good Republican. But even though the party has totally abandoned you, even though the Republican Party has changed significantly, for you to say I am a Democrat now, even though ideologically it's a big tent and there's plenty of room for you in it, it would jeopardize your status as the one good Republican. Thoughts?
Okay. Sure. And this is a optical argument that Fabian Liberty and Rob Noor and Admiral
I don't know about them. Have they said this?
And yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
Rob Noor, Admiral Gibbs, and who else? There was somebody else who was like, this is purely optics. Your function. And sorry, I'm doing a little bit of workout while we're talking. They're like, oh, this is all functionally optics. You vote Democrat. Just admit you're a fucking Democrat. Fuck off. You're a Democrat. Blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to become you. I want you to become me. And I don't want the Democratic Party to, I don't want to bend to the Democratic Party's will. I want Democrats to be more like me. And if there's Republicans who are similar to me, who feel similarly abandoned, that every single principle that we were raised with has been fleeced and destroyed and murdered in public, and 70% of the Republican base fucking laughs at it. They enjoy it. They think it's funny that the Republican Party has abandoned every single principle that it ever allegedly stood for. I would rather those people say, fuck you, I'm not a liberal. I'm not, well, maybe they're like liberal philosophically, but I'm not a fucking Democrat. But fuck MAGA. Fuck them for skinning and destroying everything that we ever fucking
So do you still
for.
call yourself a Republican? So put aside the Democrat label, or do you call yourself independent? I don't think you can call yourself a Republican.
I would probably, if like, see, we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
This is why you're so slippery.
I'm saying
this
party
is why you're
affiliation.
Such a good
It's not slippery at all. I'm asking your party affiliation.
You're such a good debater. No. I almost guarantee you, we had a similar conversation about a different topic where we talked about electoral versus ideology. This was in reference to the Vanguard boys, by the way. Okay? Because I made the concession that electorally, the Vanguard boys are closer to you and Josiah than Rob Noor, right?
Right.
Electorally. However, ideologically, Rob Noor still believes in a republic. He's not a revolutionary. He's not a socialist. He's not a communist. He doesn't want to destroy the fucking country. And so as a result, ideologically, Rob Noor is more proximate to you than the Vanguard boys are. And this is the exact fucking same thing. You're saying electorally you're a Democrat, so just be a fucking Democrat. But I'm saying ideologically I'm fucking not. There are 10 things from Sunday that I will fight you on because
Are
I
you
think
a registered Republican?
Shit.
Are you a registered Republican?
Yeah.
And would you consider yourself?
I was going to vote for Nikki Haley in the primary, but she dropped out by the time that the primaries happened.
And now you see, I think you probably still would vote for some of these Republicans who are paying lip service to Trump, even though they might, behind the scenes be disgusted with him. So I think if Chris Sununu came out, I think if Marco Rubio came out, I think if Ron DeSantis came out, you'd still vote for them, notwithstanding their complicity on MAGA.
Well, so this is actually like a super interesting question that my conservatarians in my audience who may or may not have voted for Trump, they've burned me a few times on this, held my feet to the fire. They're like, what if JD Vance becomes your ideal Republican, right? Like what if like Trump dies, okay? He has a heart attack and he's got like this perfect, nuanced, neoconservative gun, like perfect down the line on gun control, on abortion, on the economy. He's just like the perfect candidate for you. Are you voting for JD Vance? And the truth is, I don't have an answer for that because JD Vance is complicit in killing 14 million fucking people through incompetence. So do you forgive somebody who becomes your perfect political candidate after they killed 14 million people through stupidity?
But if they're willing to abide like what's going on with MAGA right now, I don't know why you wouldn't say something like, you've changed things forever. There's no going back. Like
they might have. There might be no going back. I have no idea.
So if there's, I mean,
they might have destroyed the Republican Party. They might have gutted it and made it unviable.
Well, that's what I mean. So like, what use is it registering as a Republican if you're never going to get, at least in the next 10, 20 years, a full-on repudiation of Trump in a candidate, right? Like,
okay, you've asked me the same question 4 times, trying to bully me into changing my mind. So I have to pull up a drawing for you. And I'm going to read a super chat. Okay. Because I love my chat. Quick shill to my chat. Like the stream. Share it with your friends. Engage in chat. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. Grassroots for $20. That Mickey Avalon song is only rivaled by the Bam Margera song he played live called Bend My Dick. Yes, Bam Margera has a band. It's called F Face Unstoppable, and he signed my hoodie against my will. Nice. We were talking about the Mickey Avalon song titled My Dick, which is
the only Avalon I know is Hunter.
Well, that's actually what spawned the conversation.
Oh.
So, all right, let me pull up. Because you asked me 4 times, okay? So let's go ahead and pull up my drawings, okay? I have many drawings. I'm becoming a political artist as well as an autist.
Mm-hmm.
So this is shared with you, okay? So this is what the Republican Party was 10 years ago. So fiscal conservatism is reduction in federal spending, balancing the budget so we don't collapse the fiscal perspective of the United States. I think that debt isn't going to kill us. We have like a debt to GDP ratio of 125% or whatever, but I still think that there's plenty of fat to cut, and we should absolutely redirect the way that we're spending our money, 100%. When it comes to social, pro-life, unlike a abortion centrist, pro-nuclear family, 100%, pro-achievements in academics and industry, 100%. Sometimes anti-gay, anti-choice for abortion or whatever. I don't really fuck with that, but I'm obviously like a sex-negative, anti-promiscuity, pro-natalist person.
Well, now that you have a red beard, aren't you pro-gay?
Is red beard a gay thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's like...
Everybody keeps saying it's Red Wings. It's when you...
It's like when you have your earring on the gay ear. You know, you can't have it on the gay ear.
No, it's... Well, okay, I have to defend the honor of heterosexuals. Mm-hmm. They're saying it's like when you give love to a woman with your mouth, but they're having their time of their month.
So you're saying you're okay. That's what.
So this is proud heterosexuality.
Okay.
All right. Then, when it comes to neoconservatism or Burkean conservatism, the new left went too far in the 60s through the 80s. They were a bunch of dirty socialist, communist, hippie fucks, and they needed to be fought tooth and nail. Pro-democracy and republic, and they were militarist, meaning that they were perfectly okay with military intervention and foreign intervention in order to stop the threats of communism. I agree with like 80% of this shit. So please tell me that this is what the Republican Party was 10 years ago. Please tell me where I've betrayed my principles.
I'm not saying you betrayed your principles. I'm saying the party abandoned you, and this feels like all the lefties being like, no. This is a Luxembourgist, Trotskyist, leftist. Well, I think that they include people who are... You're a fusion Republican? What are you? That sounds pretty gay.
I mean, yeah, like fusion or Burkean conservative or neoconservative, yeah.
Okay, so Biden reduced federal... the federal deficit under his term.
That chafes my ass. It chafes my ass so hard that the only people who have been fiscally responsible are fucking Democrats. It chafes my ass so fucking hard. Anyways, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's nothing incompatible about your beliefs with the Democratic Party as such as a coalition, and you're better aligned in terms of your foundational beliefs in like being pro-America, being
Why? Because I believe in a
pro-Constitution.
republic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it would be like saying, yeah, well, the Republican Party used to mean.
But you know how much of a cruel irony it is to have the Republican Party no longer believe in republicanism? Do you know how much that hurts?
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
Imagine if the Democratic Party became a fascist party.
Yeah, I wouldn't be part of that party anymore.
Well, right, but I'm no longer part of the fucking party, but I still identify with the philosophy of republicanism.
But you are a registered Republican. You call yourself a Republican.
Because I wanted to, because specifically with the primaries, I was hoping, because if you look at 2016, okay, if you look at the 2016 elections, Trump got around 35% of the vote in the primary, okay? But what happened is all the moderates stayed in the party and split the moderate vote, so Trump ended up being the nominee. If Marco Rubio had dropped out and endorsed, I don't know, what was it, like Kasich or fucking Christie or whoever the fuck was in, right? If all the moderates, if they'd done what Biden did to Bernie Sanders, if they had done to Trump what they did to Bernie Sanders, they would have saved the fucking republic. But they chose not to. And as a result, the fucking Republican Party has been flayed and destroyed.
Yeah, so it's time to leave it. It's time to stop calling yourself a Republican.
Sure, and electorally, I'll fucking leave it, but I'm never abandoning the principles or ideology that I was raised with.
Yeah, which means
that I understand, I'm not saying that you should,
but you're going to keep calling yourself a Republican because I think that there is something
and if
nostalgic
there's a good
about
Republican,
that.
I'll vote for a good. If there's a Republican who believes in republicanism, then I'm going to vote for the Republican. Let's say that we have Zoran Mamdani, and let's say we have a guy like me without JD Vance's or Trump's baggage.
You see, a guy like
Trump
me,
Republican.
a freak. Sorry.
What's that?
That's never mind. Keep going.
Okay.
Mamdani versus a guy like you.
Let's say that you have Nikki Haley without the internet censorship, okay? And maybe a better understanding of where we are currently economically, right? Nikki Haley without the internet censorship plus like a decent understanding of redistributive economics.
You're voting,
I'm voting for
Haley.
Nikki Haley over Zoran Mamdani every time, 100 times out of 100.
Even though Haley's a Trump supporter?
Hey, I've been, not that I hope she fucking sees my tweets and she cries. Every time she bitches about the Trump admin, I'm like, you're the one who endorsed this, you dumb bitch.
Yeah, she endorsed Trump. And that for you is not disqualifying?
But that's why I think I had the caveat of without all the baggage.
Okay, so a new Nikki Haley that just emerged on the scene, and okay,
you're saying like it's impossible, but Maxwell Frost is close to me in district, and Maxwell Frost is like 25. You're saying we can't find like a 26-year-old congressman?
The new Republican youth are Nazis.
I know, it's so fucking bad.
So I'm just like not very sanguine about the opportunities of some like Burkean conservative emerging from that.
God wants me to suffer, Pisco. What the fuck do you want me to say? I'll vote Democrat as long as I need to vote Democrat, and if a sane Republican emerges, I'll vote for a sane Republican. Okay.
Let's take the New York election.
You are in a more electorally viable and comfortable position, which is that of a liberal in the Democratic Party who has some progressive tendencies. You're sitting fucking pretty.
Oh, not really? Only I thought I was a communist. I thought I was a socialist.
Not only do you have a party that aligns with you ideologically, but you are in the majority within your own party. You effectively can walk around just bullying the fuck out of everybody.
How is this a response? So how is this a response? No, like if I were in your shoes, I'd be like,
this is what I'm saying.
I'm not a
God
Republican
wants
anymore.
me to suffer.
Okay,
between the two of us, God has chosen me to suffer.
And he almost killed you last week, which would have been awful.
What's that?
And he almost killed you last week.
Right. He wants me to suffer. I did something wrong in my previous life, and he is punishing me for it.
And you're punishing the whole audience with that beard. I'm just kidding. I like the beard. I like the beard. Can I just be honest with you about something? So in the New York election, we have Mamdani with a huge lead.
Yeah, I would vote for Cuomo immediately.
Cuomo's a snake.
Yeah, and he's not a communist. That's pretty easy for me. Socialist, decommodification of basic human needs, workers owning the means of production, hanging out with Hassan Piker. Fuck you, I'm not voting for you. It's actually that simple.
If you hang out with Hassan Piker, is that enough? Like Bernie.
Yeah, that's actually unironically, that's enough.
I think you would vote for Bernie.
Lose the vote.
If it were Bernie versus Trump, you wouldn't vote for Bernie?
Tlaib. What's that?
If it were Bernie versus Trump, you'd vote for Bernie, right?
I think I myself at the airport.
Answer it.
Like pass.
Answer it. Don't be a prime guy.
No. Lesser of two evils. You're gonna, dude. I've suffered enough. Stop bullying me. You're just being mean.
Answer it.
You're just being mean. That's all you're
Bernie
doing.
Or Trump?
You're like, hey, Connor, you're in a tough political position, and everybody's kicking your dick in. I'm gonna sip on my Dunkin' Donuts, and like kick your dick in for the next 40 minutes, and I casually laugh.
No, we're gonna see here if the Burkean conservative is consistent with his principles about harm reduction.
Yeah. Lesser of two harms. Yeah, if you could say that it was a lesser of two harms. If it was a lesser of two harms calculus and Bernie Sanders was clearly the lesser of two evils, then yeah, I would vote.
I'm saying if he was a lesser of two harms.
Okay, yeah. Piece of shit.
Yeah, so everyone seems to have a Bernie exception. Like a Bernie, like they're all willing to, because we think that he's hiding his power level. We don't believe the social democracy woo bullshit. We don't believe it. We don't believe it. No one who is right of Joe Biden believes that social democrats are social democrats. We all think they're socialists hiding their power level. That's not the way I mean that there's an exception for Bernie. I think that if I presented you Mamdani versus Trump, the same exact situation, I think you would not say that you would vote for Mamdani over Trump.
I would abstain from voting. You're actually making me choose between a socialist and a fascist.
There's an exceptionalism to Bernie.
I would not want to be morally responsible for anything that happens after that.
Yeah, for some reason you consider
I would not want to check my box by either thing. Yeah, because I think that both things would end up in fucked up shit that I don't want to sign off on.
The exceptionalism that I'm pointing out.
Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and go back and say, like, probably with Bernie too. I'm not checking my name by that shit. Yes.
So how do we
take
you seriously?
Democrat who hides his fucking power level.
How do we take you seriously on the 14 million died from starvation and from the authoritarianism and fascism if you're not willing to vote for someone like Bernie
because I'll be
or
dead.
Trump?
Because I shit myself at the airport because you gave me such a horrible choice that I decided to kill myself instead.
This is not something like absurd question. Like Bernie versus Trump has been around since 2015.
Yeah, okay, you're having too much fun. I'd like to move on to the next topic. All you've done is you've taken something that's very easy to kick my dick in, and you've kicked it in for 20 minutes, and I'm tired of getting my dick kicked in.
Hey, what do you want to talk about? I have some stuff as well, but you go.
I'd rather you just pick your next topic.
All right, so I want to talk about a thing that we talked about before. Again, whenever we have a conversation, I'm trying to push you a little bit. I'm trying to, get into some areas of agreement, but also areas of disagreement.
Because you want to make me you, and I don't want to be you.
I'm not trying to make you me.
Yeah, you're trying to make me a liberal. You're trying to make me a normie liberal. You're trying to make me Hutch, and I don't want to be Hutch.
Hutch is my boy.
I want to be me.
But you like Hutch.
I know.
Don't you like Hutch?
Yeah, Hutch is a great guy.
What do you think about everyone going after Hutch?
I think it's great. Well, it's great for me.
Why?
It's fantastic for me.
Why? Because
I'll be real. Because a year ago, so Hutch and I had this conversation before the 24 election, right? And he calls me on and he's like, I don't understand your politics. I don't understand Burkean conservatism. I don't understand Republicanism. And then just like you, he grilled my nuts for a fucking hour about all of my politics. And then he's like, how do you feel about trans people? How do you feel about black people? How do you feel about brown people? And then I was like, yeah, like I'm chill with like Mexicans and blacks and gays and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I think you're a progressive. And so he just like kept calling me a progressive for like 40 fucking minutes, grilling my ball sack. So now all of the progressives, like fucking piranha, like the teething fucking malicious piranha that they are, coming back and chewing on Hutch's skin and him fucking throwing elbows trying to beat the shit out of all the leftists and piranha eating him. It's perfect for me. It's perfect. I'm like, this is why I don't identify as a progressive. This is why I don't identify as a Democrat. Is because
you're scared of you're scared of the implications socially. I feel, this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is your opinion, but like if you had to identify the single thing that Joe Biden did that upset you the most, I don't even know what you'd pick. It'd be something dumb.
I probably would. I wouldn't. Matter of fact, this is what this is the joke that my wife and I made, was that she was like, shit, I really don't want Joe Biden because I think he's just going to go to sleep on the couch for the next 4 years. And I'm like, please, God, just go to sleep on the fucking couch.
Yeah, we were
for the
able to
next
go to
4 years.
brunch for 4 years. We had brunch.
Yeah.
And now we don't have brunch
I
anymore.
love brunch.
Especially
I'm
not
a
DC.
brunch Republican.
But like, I think if I were to ask you, like, what is the thing that Biden did that pissed you off the most? It'd be something like, he said
it'd be something
that
like,
guns
it would be something
should
technical.
be banned.
It would be something technical. It would be something like the Inflation Reduction Act, right? That there's no stimulus that is going to be deflationary. It's just not possible, right? Now, so that's like the classic Democrats say, like,
yeah, it was Manchin who picked the fucking name.
Well, right. But politicians.
So blame your fucking conservative right? Democrat for that.
No, but this is like the classic Democrat move. They're like,
he didn't want to call it like, Inflation Reduction Act. He wanted to call it Build Back Better.
Hold on, I want to make this point. They're like, we're making the Anti-Kicking Puppies Act, right? Then they fill it with like 30% good policy and 70% dog shit. And when somebody who's a critic of the bill, either a Democrat or a Republican, is like, hey, 70% of this bill is dog shit that's actually going to hurt the United States, they're like, what? You're for kicking puppies? And that's like classic legislative propaganda.
No, but hang on a second. So first of all, the person who wanted to make all these changes, like, into the name and to make it, fix, quote unquote, what Biden initially proposed, which would have been groundbreaking, was Joe Manchin. So if you have a problem with like the name cohering with the policy, and it's a problem of like, oh, they used the wrong name, blame Manchin. Manchin was the one who wanted to call it that. Biden wanted to call it Build Back Better.
I think the economy was overheating at that point, and we didn't need stimulus. We needed something completely different.
He was trying to shore up. So you don't agree with increasing
I
green
don't
energy
agree
subsidies?
with stimulus during an inflationary period. No.
Well, hang on a second. So there was also a reduction in spending in the bill as well. It was like deficit neutral. It was fully costed.
Okay. That has, for me, that we're talking about two different things, because we're talking about like public versus private. The money still went out into the private sector.
Yeah, and they stopped spending on other things. And so if it's, in what sense is it heating up inflation if it's like, if it's deficit neutral in terms of public spending?
Okay, so I would have to look at the technocratic aspects. If you're so if I'm hearing your argument, okay, let's say we have something that would be inflationary, like we're given $1 billion for people to be able to buy EVs or some shit. I don't fucking know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we take that out of the bill because we don't want to do direct stimulus, and instead we change it to, instead of spending $1 billion on like EV credits, we're giving people the child tax credit so people can afford to feed their families.
Yeah, I'm sure like if you analyze it, maybe those two different things have different inflationary effects.
They're going to have different inflationary effects, because you're getting money to where it's needed instead of money where it's not needed.
Right, but we don't know that, like, increasing tax enforcement and taking money out of people, like, as you sit here, just knowing that they're spending money in some areas and reducing spending in other areas, we don't have enough information to know it's going to be inflationary. That's what I mean, is you need more information. Okay. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Listen, I'll take that. I'll take that. 70% of my political coverage is reading the headlines and the articles and then covering dramas and debates.
Why do you cover the drama? Do you enjoy the drama? I mean, this shit. I'm trying to really push away the drama, and like it is so toxic.
I don't know why. For me, it's fun.
It's not fun. It's like, it's super, like, there was a civil war in my Discord, and I don't want to get into it. I just want to be clear about it. But like, I just don't understand, like, the drama stuff is not helpful towards the ultimate project. It's destructive.
Well, this is my. Are you okay if we just kind of talk about everything openly?
No, hang on, let me think.
I'll use sanitized language that doesn't involve people's names. I agree with you, and I think that drama can be a decent marketing tool. Okay, like, this personality is fighting this personality. right? Like that's how you get people into the chat, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not breaking down the ideological differences and the actual like fundamental like the differences in perspective and difference in ideology and the difference in economics and the difference in technology, if you're not breaking down those deeper things, then I think you're actually like hurting more than you're helping. And not just that, if you're personally involved in the drama, where your involvement in any kind of political project is going to be a detriment because you're so toxic yourself, then you're hurting your stated goals.
I mean, I think that analysis is apt.
Very
Like I
bland,
agree
but
that
very
like
true.
there's some things that can add a dramatic element to it for sure. But the stuff that I just can't imagine why it would be useful. And this is also, by the way, a commentary on, and maybe back to our debate on like the liberals attacking the left for doxing scandals and for this or that, right? Like, to me, the concentration on those interpersonal conflicts, it's what good comes of it for me. Like, if I were to cover, so for example, there was this Hassan thing, right, where Hassan and Bad Empanada and people are messaging me about it, and I'm just like, why should I cover that? Why is it a good idea to cover it? Why? What do I get out of it, and what does the discourse, to the extent that I have an effect on it, get out of me covering that? So walk me through that one. Like, okay, Hassan's a bad dude, Bad Empanada's a bad dude. Why should I cover that, or do you think I should?
You probably shouldn't. I
Okay.
will. And the reason why I'm going to cover it is because I do have this narrative that I'm running with, which is effectively that there are moderates and disaffected Republicans who see the same thing that I see, that the Republican Party has totally betrayed all of its values and virtues. And that if the Democratic Party was to moderate and appeal to these voters, you have to give them some time because they're going to have whiplash from like the early 20s and the late 10s. But if you gave them TLC, love and care, hugs, maybe a pudding, chocolate pudding, and a warm blanket, they might be amenable to supporting some Democratic politicians and some Democratic policies. However, when you cozy up to, like, for instance, you were grilling me earlier about Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
and Zoran Mandami and all that kind of stuff. When you cozy up to socialists or communists, this is antithetical to recruiting those moderates. And so for me, the reason why I choose to cover leftists acting like pernicious, parasitic, manipulative, fantasizing about violence, fantasizing about taking over the Democratic Party, the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to alienate leftists from liberals because the leftists are completely ideologically opposed to
you're
everything I
admitting
believe in.
you're doing it kind of to stick a wedge,
Drive a wedge between liberals and leftists? Absolutely.
But isn't that the whole reason that you're mad at leftists? Or not your reason, but like there's one reason that some liberals give for why they are mad at leftists, maybe not you, which is they're driving a wedge between the Democratic Party and the content creator, or they're driving a wedge intentionally. They're really trying to hurt the effort here. But you're self-admitting that's what you're trying to do, in the sense of you are trying to create a finer distinction between lefty content creators and liberals and antagonize and spur on controversies between them.
Because I view leftists the same way that you and I both view MAGA. MAGA was cute and funny and a joke a decade ago. And when Trump won, it was a shit post. And half of the people voting for him didn't even think that he was going to achieve anything. They did it as a joke and a middle finger to the federal government because the federal government has fucked so much shit up over the history of the United States. And then it became serious. And then it became a cult. And then and fascism had, like, I actually mean it. Political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism has destroyed my previous political home. And so what I worry about is that you guys, and I've said this to your face before, I worry that you guys cozying up to these same motherfuckers, yeah, they're not as politically relevant. Yeah, they're statistically an infinitely smaller slice of the Democratic base, but they're very loud. They energize the opposite side, and if they were big enough, they would fucking kill you and take over your party if they could.
Okay, but I'm getting this from someone who doesn't know if they would vote for Trump or Sanders, or someone who doesn't know if they would vote for JD Vance or Gavin Newsom, depending on what they would say.
Yeah, because you don't think Bernie Sanders is dangerous. You think he's cute.
I think that he's an
You think
honorable
you
guy.
think he's a doddering old man.
I think he's an honorable guy. I think that he just wants to give you health care, dude.
No. So the history of Bernard Sanders is that through the he's been in politics a long time. So he was an activist in the 60s to the 80s. He was hanging out in leftist circles. He swept for the Soviet Union and for Cuba when Cuba nearly annihilated us from a nuclear standpoint and when the Soviet Union was an evil empire. Then he also, I think he did like a Noam Chomsky level of like Serbian history revisionism. I don't think he's as bad as Noam Chomsky, but I'm pretty sure that he was like making some Serbian sympathetic arguments in the 1990s. Then he kind of realized that the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production was not a viable political route where anybody besides his local constituency would support him. And so he shifted to social democracy. And so you could argue that maybe since the thousands he's been a social democrat, I think that he still views
the 2000s. My bad.
Yeah. You could make the argument that he's been effectively a social democrat for the past 2 decades, but I think in his heart of hearts, that's only because he knows that America is not ready for socialism. And so he's trying to be an incrementalist and toil the fertile. He's trying to like till the soil to make it fertile for socialists.
Do you think
I'm not interested
he's
in
a
his
Castro
project.
guy?
Yeah.
So you're willing to abide by quote unquote sweeping for Trump, but not sweeping for Castro 50 years ago?
Ooh,
That's
wait,
so
wait,
wild.
Who said that I was willing to abide by?
Because you said that you would
sweeping
vote for
Trump?
like Nikki Haley, JD Vance type if they became your perfect conservative.
Yeah, if he was my perfect political candidate. Bernard Sanders is not my perfect political candidate.
So the baggage of having supported a fascist is not weighing down JD Vance enough for you to categorically.
I feel like you could understand this if you wanted to. You're saying that so liberals, we probably agree on 60 to 70% of shit, right? But we viciously disagree on 30 to 40%
I don't even know what we
of shit.
disagree on. What do you think you and I disagree on?
Well, actually, one of the funny things that what my chat brought up that they wanted us to fight about was gun control. What's your perfect gun policy?
I don't know. I'm not an expert here. I think that in general,
feels like an evasion.
So in general, I'm not super convinced that like gun buyback programs are viable in America. I'm not convinced. If you were to ask me, independent of the Second Amendment, right, what my ideal strategy would be, at time equals zero, if we could just prevent guns from being in the hands of as many millions as have them, that's probably better. But we don't have to live in reality.
What if you're dictator? What if you're dictator for a day?
If I'm dictator for a day?
Dictator for a day. You're Pisco Trump president day one. You have 24 hours to enact your perfect legislation,
and it would have staying power, and it wouldn't have opposition in terms of.
You don't have to care about the Second Amendment as written. You can rewrite it. Sorry, 1 second, my wife. Oh, thank you, baby. Yeah. So
it wouldn't engender resistance.
Rewrite the Constitution. What would you rewrite the Second Amendment to?
And it wouldn't engender resistance from the populace, and I would be able to have like
accept it.
They'll accept whatever I say. I would say if I had ultimate authority on that version, I would say that every individual needs to have, which is not the case currently, a permit across the country to have a gun. I would be okay with him having a right to possess guns, but to just have a higher standard for achieving a permit in terms of training. That's
okay.
it.
What about
But again, I'm not an expert here. I don't feel
semi-automatic rifles and shotguns with a high magazine capacity?
I'm not sure what my ideal policy is on that. I'm not offended by the notion of banning certain types of weapons, right? I mean, I don't think you are either. Like, I'm pretty sure you'd be okay with banning like grenade launchers, banning grenades, banning fully automatic guns, correct? You think that grenades and fully automatic guns should be legal?
So I actually like the current system. So with the current
that's
system,
convenient.
Well, no, I mean, I genuinely think it splices a decent level of responsibility and liberty, which is one of the things that I get frustrated with everybody because they focus on liberty, but they never focus on responsibility. when it comes to fully automatic weapons, when it comes to grenade launchers, when it comes to destructive devices, right now they're regulated by the ATF. If you want to create a destructive device or a fully automatic machine gun, you have to go through a super rigorous background check. And not only do you have to go through a super rigorous background check, you also have to register the serial number. You have to keep it in inventory constantly. If that weapon disappears, you are liable for it, and you have to report it immediately to the ATF. And basically, like, if you create a machine gun or a destructive device and it gets into civilian hands, like, you will lose your privilege of owning said class of weapon.
So you think the current system of regulation doesn't infringe on your notion of liberty with respect to guns? The current setup.
Yeah, I think that I hate to say this because this isn't Second Amendment enough for the conservatarians in my audience, but yeah, I think the system as it currently exists strikes a good balance between rights, privileges, and duties. I think the thing that's missing is education and emergency risk protection orders.
Well, I just find it funny because you were grilling me the other months ago when you weren't sure you were going to vote for Kamala at that moment for like the ban on quote unquote assault rifles, as though that would be a step too far. But there's already a great deal of regulations on all sorts of. Okay, but then we're just talking about a question of degree, not of kind, and the kind of threat that Kamala would represent if she were able to even implement the ban on assault weapons, whatever that means, right? And you had I think a decent point, and so do gun enthusiasts have a decent point on like even defining the scope of what an assault weapon is sometimes like an exercise in futility.
Well, we also have a legalistic and an appeal to history here as well, which is effectively like I read. Oh man, I'm a terrible political creator. I read Federalist 29 and 46 within the month. Like I've read 29 before, but I reread them with the new lens of my Democratic friends insisting that firearms are they're within the context of service in a militia, right? You know that's like the generally speaking. But what's so funny about 29 and 46 is that there's arguments about whether or not even a militia poses a threat to liberty. And then there's arguments about like effectively what would happen is based off of the interpretation of the amendment, we should technically ban handguns. Like we should ban like concealable private civilian firearms.
That's how you interpret the Second Amendment?
I mean, because like 99% of militia service is going to be with a rifle or a shotgun. It's going to be with like a large weapon, right? Because the militia is not supposed to serve a law enforcement context. It's supposed to serve the nation in a time of crisis during like rebellion or invasion.
Okay, I find this totally bizarre. I mean, like, so your interpretation of the Second Amendment is in line with like liberals and left-wing people who say it's kind of a militia-based right, that even if there is an individual component to it.
If you haven't read 29 and 46 recently, it's actually really fucking funny. It's like deeply ironic.
But therefore, you think that Heller was wrongly decided, at least in terms of outcome. Hang on, I'll explain why. So you agree that there's an individual right to have and possess weapons. I'm not saying that you don't believe that, but even though you have a different rationale to how to get to that outcome, you do think that a ban on handguns should stand. So even though you think there's an individual right to own guns, it applies to a certain set of guns. And so you could. And so DC should be allowed to ban handguns. So you would disagree with the outcome in Heller, even though you agree with the reasoning of individual rights.
So this is where it gets really, really interesting, and I'd appreciate it if you went down a technocratic hole with me, okay? So what's interesting is there's I was fighting with my chat about gun control, and God bless them, they put up with me, and they gave me a bunch of like legal precedent, 29, 46, all that kind of stuff, and we were arguing about it. And I already knew that DC versus Heller like guaranteed a civilian right to ownership. Also, if you check out 29 and 46, they also argue for a civilian, like the unorganized militia, to have the right to keep and bear arms. They're talking about civilians. Like, it's clear. If you read the text, it's clear they're talking about civilians having the right to keep and bear arms. But what's funny, though, is that in, I think it's 1929, there was somebody who was carrying a short-barreled shotgun concealed, and he tried to appeal to the Second Amendment in order to say, like, oh, I can carry a short-barreled shotgun in violation of this, like, gun control act because it's part of my rights as an American citizen under the Second Amendment. But what's funny about that law, and I don't know how high it went up, but it's a famous case, is the court said, well, a short-barreled shotgun is not used typically in a military context. Therefore, the gun control legislation that bans a short-barreled shotgun stands. And what's so funny about that is like, yeah, are pistols used in the military? Sure. But they're used as backups and by the officer. 99% of what the military does is with long arms. It's with rifles and shotguns. And so I think that you could, not that I would, but you could make an argument that pistols are actually like not relevant to service in a militia, but an AR-15
this is weasel
absolutely
language.
is.
Like, you could say anything. You could say the sky is
I
red.
think you can make a strong argument
but
for
you're saying it wouldn't be convincing to you. So you have to explain why it wouldn't convince you.
It's not convincing to me. It's convincing to, I think that it could be argued within the same spirit of that 29.
I don't care if it could or could not be argued, Connor. I want to know, like, who cares what
you a lawyer?
No, we're not talking about, in this context, what could be argued. I'm asking what you think and why you're not convinced by the argument that handguns are not protected by the Second Amendment, which you're saying you could make a strong argument.
Okay. I get what you're poking at.
Yeah.
The reason, if I was a lawyer defending this case, I would say.
No, I want to know what you think. I'm not put you in a position of an advocate.
Yes, I'm about to tell you what I think from a legalistic, argumentative standpoint.
All right.
Okay. I thought about getting a JD myself, Pisco. So what I'm fantasizing about right now,
I don't even know about your fantasies.
Is you and me in a court. Okay, we're in a court, and somebody else is the judge, and Pisco says, "Fuck handguns. They're responsible for 99% of homicides. They don't serve a military purpose. They don't serve a militia purpose. This is clearly outside the scope of 29 and 46. Therefore, handguns should be banned." Okay, Pisco just said that. What I would counter is that sidearms, like pistols, are actually very common in the military. They're common in the officer class. They're common as backups. They're common in tank crews. And as a result, pistol proficiency for the non-commissioned corps and for the officer class is actually a part of like military skills and militia-based skills. Therefore, pistols should be allowed. End of argument.
So is your final argument or your final position that the Second Amendment protects handguns or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does, but I still think that you would, if we were in a race to win the favor of a judge, I think it would be a competitive fight based off of this logic.
Well, not anymore.
Well, not anymore, but I still think it would be like, let's say we time travel to the day before DC versus Heller and we have this exact line of argumentation in court. I actually think it would be like a 51-49 decision on whether or not pistols got banned for civilian use in the United States of America.
I think they did address this in Heller. Let me hang on. You say something.
I'm sure they do.
Hang on.
They had to have. But I'm telling you, that court case was probably. I understand. I hated this quote from Hillary Clinton for the longest time. I used it as ammunition to hate that bitch, and trust me, I hate her. But she had this thing where like she was like, "Well, I actually disagreed with the court at the time of decision of DC versus Heller for blah 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 blah," and I was like, "Fuck this bitch. She's trying to take my guns." But I actually understand her rationale a lot more now. I don't like it, but I understand it.
Give me a second to try to find the quote. Okay, so this is him criticizing Stevens' dissent. "Nothing so clearly demonstrates the weaknesses of Justice Stevens' case. Miller, said in a different case, did not hold that and cannot possibly be read to have held that. And that means that the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms for certain military purposes. The judgment in the Miller case upheld against the Second Amendment challenge two men's federal indictment for transporting an unregistered short-barreled shotgun in interstate commerce in violation of the National Firearms Act. It is entirely clear that the court's basis for saying that the Second Amendment did not apply was not that the defendants were, quote, bearing arms, not for military purposes, but for non-military use. Rather, it was that the type of weapon at issue was not eligible for Second Amendment protection. Quote, in the absence of any evidence tending to show that the possession or use of a short-barreled shotgun at this time has some reasonable relation to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia, we cannot say the Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear such an instrument. Certainly," the court continued, "it is not within judicial notice that this weapon is any part of the ordinary military equipment or that its use could contribute to the common defense. Beyond that, the opinion provides no explanation of the content of the right." This holding is not only consistent with...
I want to tell you something that's particularly ironic, and it's like so ironic. I taste a steak in my mouth when I say it. Okay, I taste the iron. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
short-barreled shotguns have come into military usage in the past like 50 years. So as a result, like we could re-argue and relitigate that case that actually short-barreled shotguns should serve, do serve a military and militia-oriented purpose as breaching tools, and therefore like the civilians should have access to short-barreled shotguns because it's routine in military duties to use them as breaching tools, which is awesome.
That's super interesting. That like the scope of a right. Oh, the sound is cutting out for some people. Hang on. So testing 1, 2, 3. Try refreshing your
it might
YouTube
be on
stream.
my end.
I don't think it's on your end. Maybe it's on my end. So audio. Hey, YouTube, can you hear? Sound skipping. How about now? Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sound. Audio. I'm hearing you. So just answer whether or not you can hear me. Twitch, you can hear me, right?
Come on, wake up, Pisco's chat. Let's go.
Did it fix it? Are we good on YouTube? Yes, sir. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, it would seem weird, though, that like the scope of the Second Amendment depends on whether like the government chooses to include something as ordinary military equipment. Like if they chose to include tasers as ordinary military equipment, would the Second Amendment include tasers? It just seems like to me that it that can't be right. That can't be the right analysis. And it's something that like the courts have, at least the conservative originalist court has backed away from, is letting the current government or the current, policies of the government dictate what the Constitution means, Like what? If all of a sudden...
I'm with you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm with you for the 29 argument. And by the way, this is like a 90-minute heated argument between my chat and myself. We were like watching completely unrelated content. We got onto like a gun topic, and then we just fell into a rabbit hole of like fighting about gun control. And that's how I found out about the, did you say it was Miller, the short-barreled shotgun case?
Yeah, I think that's the Miller case, yeah.
So with Miller, that's where we found that. I don't agree with the rationale of Miller, but at least I understand like how a sane person could read 29 and 46 and arrive at Miller. Now, I think that person is personally like hostile to guns, but I at least understand the logic behind it. And so that's kind of where I ended up.
But it's interesting because like you're not taking a maximalist view of the Second Amendment, which is like you can't put any regulations. I'm not hearing you to say that ex-felons can't have guns, right? Do you have a right to have guns?
This is so funny. I've actually like I've moved so much, not on personally where I want the Second Amendment to be, but on where I think the Second Amendment is more flexible than I ever gave it
interesting.
Where I ever gave it credit for. So what's interesting is, in my opinion, firearms are actually like one of the least necessary elements of or one of the least. I'm trying to think of how to say this. It's like the least important part of the puzzle, okay? Because I could take 12 dudes with AR-15s.
I know you could take 12 dudes.
Right, thanks. Anyway,
with that beard?
So I could take 12 dudes with AR-15s, give them no training. Just let them go to the range with 25-yard weapons, 25-yard ranges, and just let them plink away with an AR-15, which, let's face it, that's like the current standard of the average unorganized militia member in the United States right now, is going to a 25-yard indoor range and shooting rounds, right? That's their level of training and competency. Whereas I could take technology from 1860, like 1865. I could get double action revolvers, lever action revolvers, and pump action shotguns, technology that's existed for 150 fucking years and was in military use. And I could train another 12 dudes, and I could give them more combat skills to the point that they would smoke the fucking AR-15 people. They would annihilate them, destroy them, like clearing rooms. It would be like a 10-to-1 casualty ratio of people using 150-year-old technology compared to people using modern technology. So what's interesting about that is it opens this can of worms where technically it's like, well, are we training the militia in order to be as efficacious as the military through technology? Or are we trying to create like a warrior spirit within the American populace where in case of emergency, in case of rebellion or invasion, they are capable of picking up arms and picking up the slack of the military and law enforcement? I would argue it's the latter. I would argue that the military skills are more important than the technology.
In which case, if it's ultimately the grander purpose of the Second Amendment is informing a lot of how you interpret it, which is the kind of thing that the liberals are arguing in terms of their interpretation of the Second Amendment, then you wouldn't have any problem with, for example, not letting ex-felons own guns. If a state chooses to not let their... Go ahead.
With felons, though, I think it should be like an adjudicated issue, right? So for instance, like let's say a felon like serves their sentence and they've reintegrated back into society, they're working a job, they have good relationships with their family or whatever. I would want a court to review their current status in order to restore their rights to keep and bear arms. Similar to the way that I would
That's
want
your
to,
preferred policy, but you don't think the Second Amendment protects...
right.
Well, that's your preferred policy, but you don't think the Second Amendment mandates that a state allow ex-felons to have... Like, I understand you would prefer a state to adopt a policy that's more allowing of a right, right? You know, right now, federally, it's banned, but...
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Are you saying that... are you saying that argumentatively I would want felons to keep and bear arms, or I wouldn't want them to keep and bear arms?
I'm saying you don't think that ex-felons have a right under the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms.
Right, because we're correct. Because we're pointing to the purpose of the Second Amendment. If you read it as read with a maximalist interpretation, then you're going to say, well, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, it shall not be infringed. It makes no specifics about the category of those people, right? The federal government, right? But we have made all these common sense inferences where we say, well, if
mental
you're such
health,
a violent
red flag laws, you know,
schizophrenia, yeah, like
so you
like all
sound
these
like a
kinds of things.
liberal on guns, Connor.
Well, I do, but that's because the truth is this was part of my argumentation with Mahmoud Khalil, by the way, though, is that with the First Amendment, we already have categorical exceptions to the Constitution that are like a reasonable interpretations of where a civilized society should be. And so if we have all these reasonable interpretations of where a civilized society should be in respect to the Second Amendment, why wouldn't we have those same expectations with the First Amendment? Which is what I was trying to point out to you several months ago, is that I view you as a First Amendment maximalist.
Oh, I don't think I'm a First Amendment maximalist. I think that I'm adopting, the First Amendment with all of the caveats that were understood at the time, including like defamation and obscenity and all of these different, areas of unprotected speech. And so I reject the framing that I'm.
Yeah, but I would say that's inferential from other text besides the First Amendment, right?
So I think it's influential. You're correct. If you just read the text of the First Amendment, it doesn't list all these categories. But what the right of speech meant to the framers was incorporated in an English common law view or English Bill of Rights view of the First Amendment. So yes, even though the words they are using to a modern audience wouldn't connote all of the exceptions to a learned audience at the time that this provision was framed, they would understand that it's not absolute, and it was never intended or understood to be absolute.
I would say that I went from, if you checked out in 2019, I think the first thing that some of the first content that I ever created was like Second Amendment maximalist interpretations of the Constitution, because that was just like the culture that I was brought up in. That's the propaganda that I'd, digested, all that kind of stuff. What's so funny about this is I feel like I still hold the same positions for like where the line should be. But I understand that the line is infinitely more flexible than I originally gave it credit for because of these other interpretations, which I believe is backed in Federalist 29 and Federalist 46. I seriously, I invite the chat. I know it's boring, but I invite the chat to read Federalist 29 and 46. I think you'll understand the concepts infinitely more.
But I'll just add, though, that it sounds that your disagreement with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on the assault weapons ban isn't like a rooted philosophical distinction. It's a question of whether the Constitution applies to such instruments and maybe what your preferred policy would be. But it's not like you're this gun maximalist. Even 50% of where go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't agree with your characterization, and I'll tell you why. But I do want to read another super chat real quick. Q Phoenix says, "Show us the drawings, Connor." Thank you kindly for your super chat. Mm-hmm. I will show you some more drawings. So I don't agree with you.
Okay.
The reason why I don't agree with you is because Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, every person who ever talks about weapons of war, AR-15s, AK-47s, high capacity
Because they're
magazines.
idiots on guns because they never fired a gun and they don't know anything about it.
Not only that, I don't think they've read 29 or 46, because they could have made the argument that I made, that warrior skills are infinitely more important than the technology. Therefore, we should focus on like gun education and all this kind of stuff. And dude, you could technically, based off of how flexible I understand 29 and 46, in my opinion, you could restrict firearms to like bolt action, single shot bolt action rifles and fucking revolvers. You could restrict it that far and still fulfill the Second Amendment. But what you would need to do in order to fulfill it is you would need to have the education component where you actively educate, like basically the Swiss model. Are you familiar with the Swiss model at all?
No, I'm not, but you sound like a communist, so I'm not surprised you're citing Europe.
Okay, so with Switzerland, all of their able-bodied, able-minded adult males who turn 18, I think they do like a 2-year stint of service, and they have a state-issued assault rifle that stays in their like a gun locker throughout the year, and they have an ammo. They have like an ammo reservoir.
Okay.
Now they're legally prohibited from opening it except for during training, which I think they do twice a year. And so as a result, civilian firearms ownership is pretty strictly controlled. They still have it, but it's very strictly controlled. But then the militia element is fulfilled by these young men who have state-issued assault rifles.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I almost feel like that's a different fulfillment of the Second Amendment spiritually.
Do you think that teachers should be armed?
Not instructional staff, but I do agree with the Guardian program where school administrators can be concealed weapons carriers.
I see. What do you think about, I was going to ask you a broader question because I think, listen, this gun conversation has white-pilled me a little bit about you, Connor, because it does sound that you're not as absolutist as you sounded some months ago. And maybe that's because of your research, the legal research, maybe, your priors about at least some of the logical conclusions made by certain of your principles don't make sense anymore in keeping with your new historical understanding, which I totally respect you for kind of like, I don't know if the right word is moderating as opposed to just shifting your understanding of the history and that guiding.
I'm shifting my understanding. Yeah. I try to tell the truth as I see it.
Sure. So that's white pilling me a little bit, but it just makes the kind of, in retrospect, reaction to Kamala and Biden's policies there, it's a little bit over the top. Yeah, they want to ban assault rifles, but you'll fight them against that. That's just like one of a bunch of policies you might disagree with, but it's not. No, because
I think this is an argument that you and I almost had on Steven's stream, but then we didn't actually end up having.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Where does power come from?
Power resides where one believes it resides. Are you fond of
True.
Rizzles?
I mean, that was my parable. Absolutely. Game of Thrones reference right there for those of you who don't know. But okay, so power resides where people believe it resides. There's a parable behind it. We'll skip the parable since you're already aware of it. But my question to you is unironically, so power resides where we think it resides. Well, we've seen how fragile the Constitution and the rule of law can be when you have 30% of the country that doesn't care about the Constitution or rule of law. So if we agreed, let's say in 2005, we agreed that the power of the United States rested in the Constitution of the United States and the rule of law that the federal government and state governments are able to provide as a constitutional republic. And we agreed on that. But now there's 30% of the population that no longer believes that. Okay? Where does power reside now?
I don't know. In the majority, I don't know what you're aiming for. Sorry.
No, unironically, it's in my opinion, the reason why this game that MAGA is playing is so dangerous is because it resides in the power of the majority. So and not just the majority, because technically you can have like a more populist majority who is oppressed by a more forceful minority, but the fundamental principle that undergirds this entire thing is force. And so that's where, for me, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris misunderstanding the Second Amendment and willfully pushing policy that perverts federal 29 and federal 46. This isn't an arbitrary issue. This is like the underlying power structure of human relations. They misunderstand humanity.
I think it's a little bit much. So just because they want to ban some guns, they misunderstand humanity. But I want to.
No, I genuinely don't. I genuinely disagree.
I'm conscious of your time. I know that you closed out at 2, and I have another engagement I have to do in a second. But I wanted to close out with 2 different questions for you. The first is, name a single thing that Trump has done in this second term that you like. Can you name one?
What has Trump done that I like? I think you're going to hate this, but give me a little bit of latitude. Securing the border. Okay. Now, doing that by executive fiat, doing that by torturing people, doing that by deporting them, all that's evil shit.
But that's how he's doing it, Connor. That's one of the one of the main ways in which he's doing it is doing illegal and fucked up shit.
You asked me policy. Yeah, policy can be both effect and cause. I'm criticizing cause while lauding effect.
Oh, but you would never say this like, oh yeah, he's got gun crime down, and what they did to get gun crime down is they arrested everyone who owns guns. Like, you wouldn't be like, oh, well, I agree with the policy of getting gun crime down. And you know how they did it is just by arresting all the gun owners. Like, you would never grant that. You'd be like, that's crazy. Yeah,
You're right.
All right, so then are you going to take it back? Take it back, motherfucker. Take it back.
No, I'm not taking it back.
Why not?
I'm not taking
You're
it back.
so proud sometimes. Just take it back.
Because
it's a stupid thing to say.
Really?
Yes.
Pedal?
It is dumb to be like,
Pedal?
what are we talking about?
Pedal?
What are you talking about, pedal?
Kettle.
Kettle?
You are a kettle.
How am I a kettle?
Calling the pot black.
How am I
you are
hypocritical?
So proud sometimes. You are so proud sometimes. You are so obstinate sometimes. You are so stubborn sometimes.
You accepted the parallelism. No, you accepted the hypothetical that it would be ridiculous, preposterous to say, well, they got gun crime down. I agree with that policy. If the way he did it was so perverse and illegal and contrary to rights, you would never grant that, and you just won't grant it in your case of the border security because of pride. That seems to be what it is.
Okay, so I'm going to ignore what you said because it's funnier to do that. So
you just got fucking owned. You just got owned, and you have nothing to say.
That's a Fabian tactic, and I gotta say
it's a Fabian tactic.
And I gotta say it's my least favorite tactic. My least favorite tactic is making
declaring victory.
And then declaring victory. It's
but I'm giving you the opportunity to address it.
If you had a good enough of a point, you wouldn't need to declare victory. You would just let your point.
You just said I don't want to address it because it's funnier when I don't.
Well,
I don't know what kind of tactic that is, or if Fabian does that.
It's because I was reading chat. Do you want to repeat what you said?
Yeah, so you don't even listen. 80% of the time, you're not even listening. So what I said was,
bullshit.
You wouldn't give credit to someone.
You complimented me earlier in the conversation for being one of the few people that you can talk to who you feel actually pays attention and listens to the content
20% of the time, and that's very impressive. 20% of the time, 80%. That is impressive. That's above the average. But I do want to say
condescending.
No, I'm not.
Because this is funny. This is funny. That's why
this is not a joke to me. My country's not a joke to me. So here's the example, right? The example is, are you listening or just watching super chats?
I'm listening. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to look at chat. I'm staring right at you.
You wouldn't have given credit to Trump if he was reducing crime by like throwing a bunch of people in prison without due process, right? Yeah. And you wouldn't give credit if someone's like, well, we got gun crime down because we're arresting all the gun owners. Similarly, why would you give credit for a secure border if one of the major ways he's securing the border, quote unquote, securing the border,
dumbest way possible?
It's in illegal and rights depriving ways.
Because this is my beef, and I think this complexifies the argument, Mr. I need to declare victory, is that I view Democrats and I view the status quo, quote unquote, uniparty, deep state, whatever bullshit you want to fucking assign it. I view them as making Trump's actions inevitable. Okay? If you
could say the same thing about my example. Yeah, the left in their pro-crime ways, they made the guy who's arresting everyone without due process inevitable. That's what they say about Bukele.
Yep.
So you're going to accept that you would give credit to someone bringing crime down in America by just arresting people?
I give Bukele credit despite being an authoritarian dickbag.
Even in America, where there is a rule of law?
What's that?
Even understand that Bukele is in a different context in El Salvador, and America has a foundational like structure here, which isn't complete anarchy from gangs.
You're asking a pointed question, and you're acting like there's some level of hypocrisy, and there isn't. You said, what policy do you appreciate about like the Trump presidency or some shit like that? The policy is not just how or means, it's also effect, right? So what I would say is I can appreciate the effect while decrying the policy. And I actually think this is like really, I think the Trump short-term gain on a secure border is actually setting up an even more toxic dynamic than what was possible before.
He's not negative on the border security, even on border security, by the way.
It probably is, because what's going to happen? Because as far as I know, yeah, he beefed up ICE. Yes, he got a border bill passed. Yes, but majority of his actions or whatever are cruelty administered through executive action. And a majority of that cruelty is going to be reversed with the next administration, regardless of whether or not it's Democratic or Republican. And then not just that, even a Republican, if we have price shocks to agriculture and construction, we're going to return to the status quo of like loose, porous border, tolerating mass undocumented immigration, because that will be preferable to the authoritarian dictates of Donald Trump. But I view this as something that you can go back to interviews of George Bush in 2000, 2003, 2004, talking about how Congress keeps kicking the can down the road for border security and how it's imperative that we act to secure the border in order to make sure that people who are coming into our country are vetted and appropriate for our economy and culture. We've been talking about this problem for 20 or 30 fucking years. So you can be mad that Trump is an authoritarian fucking dickbag who's doing this thing in all the wrong way. But so
you would condemn his border policies,
right? I view the
right?
inefficacy of the Republican government as being responsible for Trump being able to do this in the first place.
Okay, fine. But do you condemn his border policies?
In means, absolutely.
Well, I mean, how do you get the Trump results without his means? How can you just that's what I mean. It's like saying, oh yeah,
like physically securing the border. You guys gave me so much shit. You gave me so much, but how much riddle me this.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Declares victory. How much did they spend on upgrading ICE and securing the border in this most recent bill?
Something like $40 billion for ICE,
$40 billion. How much was Trump's original dumbass fucking border wall going to cost?
It depends at different times. They gave him way more than what I forget the amount that they got for border wall. The figure I'm giving you is not the figure for the border wall. Border wall funding.
It's either 21 or 6.
Okay, the border wall includes $46 billion for construction, and initially the debate in the first term was like between 5 and 10 or something like that, if I recall correctly.
Right. But I remember it as 6, but it could have been like 21. I'll put 21 at the high number, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is that through Biden's kicking the can of immigration down to the last fucking year and then trying to pass a bill at the last second as a symbol.
Wait, that was really bad.
Of caring about border security.
But that's
what enabled Trump to
I'm not
win.
asking what enabled him. I'm asking what do you support? And so okay, yeah, you can give a descriptive reality
I support securing the fucking border.
Okay, but not through those means.
Correct.
So you don't support his border policies. It would be like saying I support like your son cheats on a test and he's found out and he got an A because he cheated. Be like, well, I don't support the means.
My son getting A's.
But you're like, do you support his academic policies? You'd be like, yeah, he got an A.
No, never. You know.
So I got your ass. So I got your ass.
I don't think you got shit.
Your ass.
I don't think you got shit. But that's fine.
Okay, last question, and then I have to bounce. But this is, I think, relevant as in the closet Democrat. Who do you want to come out of the nomination fight in 2028?
Funnily enough, I think as a racist Republican Democrat, I think you need Newsom.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Because he's white, straight, male, He could pretend to be Christian. He has a blonde wife. He has 4 white kids.
Really?
You know, he went on with Sean Ryan.
Because he has a white family, that's what you want? Because he's not.
No, I think that's what's needed. Because they're not. Because the rest of the world, as a closeted Democrat, the rest of the world is not as progressive as I am. I like Pete.
So you want a white candidate. So one of your factors going into the election is
male
we want
and
a white male who's straight and has a cute family.
A straight white male. It has to be.
Okay.
If you go with Pete Buttigieg, who, by the way, I like Pete Buttigieg. I admire Pete Buttigieg. But if you go with Pete Buttigieg, you're going to lose because he's gay. If you go with Josh Shapiro, you're going to lose because he's Jewish. If you go with Kamala Harris, you're going to lose because he's a woman.
So you think America's racist, anti-Semitic, and sexist?
Go on Twitter and tell me I'm wrong.
You sound like a lefty every day.
Well, hold on. All you've done is you've accused me of being bigoted or believing in the bigotry of others. But
and now you're saying you're embracing the mantle. You're saying you're embracing the mantle. You're saying
I won. I got the dub because I'm right. Because America is anti-Semitic, racist, and sexist, and Pisco won't admit that because it's bad optics.
Okay, counterpoints. This was a wonderful conversation. I hope you feel better. Get your son a donut, man. I mean, like, what's going on? You really need to let him.
Me. Your liberal guilt has guilted me so bad that I'm going to check in with the wife and see if I can get him a donut for when he comes home from school.
Lovely.
And I'll apologize.
He'll always remember it.
For yelling at him and trying to instill some discipline.
You should be sad that your mom's in the hospital. You shouldn't be thinking about donuts.
Yeah, you fucking selfish dickhead.
No, hey, hope you feel better. This was great, and talk again soon, okay?